So the video today is all about a 1990 Harley FXR set up for one-armed riding. Bit of history about FXRs. It came out in 1982 with a shovel head engine in it. 84 they stuck the Evo in. Runs 5-speed box, no kicker, belt drive. Kind of like a big Sportster, really. Big twin version of a Sportster, I always look at it. So it handles quite nicely. They were criticised for being a bit too Japanesey at the time, but I think that's not necessarily a bad thing. Stopped making them around the mid-90s. They did bring them back a few times to about 2000 in different incarnations, but weren't popular at the time, but have grown into sort of cult status type of bike, and can be a lot of fun. So the bike had, so shall we say, an interesting history before I owned it. I won't go into it, but it was fairly notorious around Oxfordshire. When saw it, it was in a custom bike shop near Whitney, and it was looking a bit unloved and sort of shoved in the corner type thing, bits missing off it. But I thought, oh, it looks quite cool. I like the colour. It was a bit too bling-tastic for me, too many chrome doodads all over it. But I already had a 2010 Wide Glide, and I fancied something a bit older. So didn't know a huge amount about Evos, FXRs, or anything like that, really. But I just thought it looked kind of cool. Turned out to be the right sort of price, and so in the end, I bought it. Got it home and then started doing some investigation, as you do, and thought, yeah, I think what it needs to be is a bit more bare bones. So started taking off various bits and pieces. What didn't I like? I didn't like some of the chrome extras that had chrome cover over the tail light and a chrome cover over the rear caliper and chrome covers here. And I took all those off. Didn't like the side panels. They were a bit big and ugly, so they went. Didn't like the chrome sissy bar either particularly, so that went. What else? The seat was very comfy, but quite huge, so decided to do away with that. The bars, I quite like the bars. I like the paint job. The rest of it was all right. I mean, the pipes I wasn't particularly a fan of, so they would probably end up going. So I was looking at it and deciding how to mod it, and I basically decided to change the controls up for something similar to my Y Glide. So to do a one-arm setup like that. So what that meant doing was basically getting more modern switchgear and more modern master cylinder on the bars, as the ones on there were the old style coffin ones, or rectangular, I suppose they're called, aren't they? So the modifications began. As you can see in the pictures here, the seat's already changed. The handlebars have all been stripped of all their switchgear, because obviously you're not going to want it on the left anymore and only on the right. While I was at it, I got a friend to drill the bars because I decided to do internal wiring on the bars, and that actually worked out quite well. New switchgear from a later model Harley, so sort of same as the Y Glide 2010 era, and a new master cylinder. Got those started and got them hooked up. For the controls, obviously it's stock Harley switchgear, clutch, and master cylinder. The good thing about Harley switchgear is interchangeable, so you can swap left and right hand side switches over. So normally you'd have the start button and then the kill switch and then the right indicator on the right hand side. What I've done is I've actually taken the kill switch out, just hot wired that, and put a high-low beam in there, and I just use the ignition switch as the kill switch. And the indicator is now the horn button. So I actually just scraped off the lettering for the horn. When you're doing a setup with these controls on the master cylinder, the brake light switch is actually activated by the brake lever. Now, when you put the clutch in there, the brake lever is going to foul on the clutch perch, as it were. So you actually have to grind off the back of the brake lever to get rid of the knobbly bit that activates the front brake light switch. Otherwise, you could end up jamming brake on, or it won't activate all the way. Also, this means that you have to run a hydraulic front brake light switch, which is easy to do. They're only about 15 quid or something like that. But you have to be prepared to start doing a few modifications to be able to get these sort of things to work. Also, when I was setting the bike up, the clutch on Evos is pretty heavy. Not like a shovel head, which is nice and light, or twin cam, which is light and can be made super light. Yeah, the FXR clutch was fairly horrible. So I put a Muller light pull clutch in, which gave a 40% reduction, which is, quite significant, but it's still a heavy clutch. If you're going to do a lot of riding with it with one hand, I'm not entirely sure I'd recommend it. I mean, there may be other ways around it, like a hydraulic conversion or something, but yeah, I'm not entirely sure I'd recommend it. I mean, my twin cam and shovels you can do with 2 fingers. But this thing, no, it's definitely not a 2-finger job, unfortunately. Now, the way I ride with one arm is I've still got enough use left in my left arm for me to have my shoulder working properly. So I actually attach my left hand to the handlebars with Velcro. So that's why I have a left grip with Velcro on, and a glove that will Velcro onto the handlebar. This may not suit everybody, because obviously some people are using their sling still and just ride one-handed without it. But for me, this setup works well. I had to obviously rewire the switch gear in, and I actually took the indicators off, so I wasn't going to run any indicators on it. Found out also, I think that the throttle cables were a bit too short, so I had to swap them out. As you see in this picture, I've also got rid of the side panels and got some nice little small black ones. Got a nice little seat on it. The rear tail light has now had its horrible chrome covers removed, and it's starting to look a bit more like a bike that I would want to ride. It's all a bit more stripped down, kind of ready to go. At this point, I knew there was an issue. It was pumping out oil. Started riding around, but it was quite evident that when I went off to the MOT centre and it was pumping out a bit of oil, and then went for a ride, pumping out a bit of oil, and I thought, I'm kind of a bit out of my depth here. I think I'll send it off to have the engine looked at. Unfortunately, it turned out the engine hadn't been rebuilt particularly well at some point. Had the engine rebuilt by Matt's Machine Shop. There was some good news, though. It turned out it had a hot cam in it. So the heads had been ported, it was bored out. It had some good stuff like Delcron cases. And it's a very nice motor indeed. I think they're about 55, 60 horsepower stock. This one's closer to 80, which is about the most you're going to get out of a stock engine configuration. I didn't really want to go, put a big stroker motor and all that sort of stuff in. I wanted something that I could ride every day, but with enough get up and go to get you out of trouble, or if you needed to overtake, you could. It's worked out very well. I'm very happy with the motor indeed. 7 years ago, I think it was done. Still doesn't leak a drop of oil. These people that say, Harleys, they leak oil. No, mine don't. Talk to other FXR owners and they'd say, mine's running out of puff at 70, 80. And it's like, well, mine isn't even on cam till you get to 80. The whole point of the bike was really to be a hack bike, to be rideable every day, to get through traffic. Doesn't matter what the weather was like, if it was raining or snowing or horrible. It was to be ridden. I was riding to work every day. Not far, it was only 10 miles there, 10 miles back. And so it was one of the hack bikes. The other one was an old Z550 LTD, but sort of semi-customised. And it went on for a few years like that, earning its keep, slowly getting a bit more tatty all the time. But, it worked well. The only thing I really didn't like was the bars. The bars were a bit of a pain because at high speed, it was like having a couple of spaniel's ears hanging out the side. And at low speed through traffic, the bars were simply too wide. So that was at the back of my mind about doing something about that. I was doing all my own maintenance on it, so oil changes and all that, and fixing issues as they went along, including one time when I came out from work up to the bike and I thought, hang on a minute, what's that on my bottom yoke? Hmm, that looks suspiciously like a bit of a crack. Well, no, it was worse than that. My bottom yoke had snapped. I'm not entirely sure how it happened. I think there might have been some fatigue in there, shall we say, and probably usual Harley build control. And yeah, that was quite entertaining. Needless to say, after that, I put a cast iron one on. After a couple of years, I decided to do something about the bars. So put on a set of T-bars, would you call them that? Maybe. And basically they're kind of the same width as the foot pegs, but up much higher. And they're brilliant. They go over car mirrors. So if you can get the foot pegs through, the rest of the bike's going to go through as well. And this made commuting to work much more easy. Now, around the time of lockdown, which was, what was that, April 2019, something like that, I was going to service the bike, and as you can see in the picture, there's a service pack for Evo and a service pack for a twin cam, and I had to change a rear tyre because I had some horrible Avons on it. I didn't like them at all. Put some Bridgestones on. It was much nicer. But didn't take long for me to realise that the paint job was basically falling off. And worse than that, there was water under the paint. So it was a case of, I've got to do something about it. Well, it's lockdown. Not going to work. I don't need the bike at the moment. So pulled all the bodywork off and treated it all, rubbed it down, filled it, rattle can spray job, put it all back on. I thought, well, the good thing about this is it's all just rattle can, so you just can respray it. And it actually turned out, I think, to be quite nice. It gave the bike a completely different look. Instead of being, rather nice blue Harley, it was now rather butch black Harley. So that was definitely an improvement. And cars just really got out of the way when I was filtering through. Also, while it was being stripped down during lockdown, I swapped out the levers. So if anyone here is listening and rides a Harley, you know what I mean by those big fat Harley levers. Well, I got rid of them, got some nice thin adjustable Oberon levers, which, funny enough, I've also got on my wide glide. They're lovely levers, not cheap, but make life a lot easier. Now, after that, one slight problem I had when I built the bike years ago, I'd taken the indicators off. Now, by law, it needed indicators, and my friendly MOT station was no more. So I went to another MOT station, and it was pointed out to me that really I should have some indicators on it. I didn't really want to use the Harley ones, and I didn't really want to use the Harley switchgear. So what I did was build my own system, which is completely separate. As long as there was a power wire to the whole system, it would work independently. So I could put my own switches on. I didn't need to use any of the Harley wiring at all. I could just leave all that untapped. So if I ever sold the bike, somebody could just plug all the Harley stuff back in and take this off. And it was very cheap. It was all LEDs. I think the switches are like a tenner each, and the indicators are like 15 quid a pair or something like that. All that's needed is a bit of imagination and wiring it up. And they work really well. I'm quite pleased with them, considering it was done on the cheap, and took it in the MOT station, and it was like, yes, that's a pass, sir. Other important things for you to note when you're modifying or setting up your Harley, or any bike really, is stuff like you want to use a nice, good quality clutch cable, and you want to make sure the routing of it is kind of like in a gentle arc. You don't want any sharp corners, sharp angles, anything like that. I mean, on some bikes, it doesn't matter if it's a small bike and it's a lightweight clutch, it's fine. But on something like this, you need all the help you can get. So I've had to change mine. When I went from the wide bars to the narrow bars, I used the same clutch cable, but it was quite sharp, some of the angles, and in the end, I swapped that out and for a longer one, and that improved it no end. Other mods the bike's got, it's got some decent suspension on it. It's got Hagons at the back, progressive springs in the front. It's got a billet 4-pot caliper on the front, a decent comfortable seat, because the bare bones one that I had on, I used to slide off the back at about 60, so that had to go. Even stuff like the forward controls, after riding it around for a couple of months, realised they were too far forward, so actually had the back plates modified and the forwards moved back and up about an inch each way, I think, and again makes it much more comfortable. As you can see by the picture, the bike still gets used all year round, and even though it lives in a garage, it's a bit of a filthy old thing. Gets washed off once a year. I still do maintenance to it. This year I've had to change the front engine mount because that was worn out, and it generally gets sort of slowly modified over the years. So I'm looking at this picture of it, which is probably about a year old, and you can see in this one the S&S filter cover is black. Well, if you look earlier in the video, the chrome. I changed the fuel filler cap to a nice aluminium one instead of chrome. Took stuff off like the fork seal covers, big chrome fork seal covers. Well, what did they do? They let all the water in, and the water just sat there on your fork seals and ruined them, so they all went. One of the other problems I had with the Harley, ever since I got it really, was that solid rear wheel. Looks great, terrible in crosswinds. Now, if you live in Britain, as you know, it's wet and it's windy a lot of the time. So the last thing you want is a solid rear wheel at 70 miles an hour in crosswinds. So that had to go. In the end, I found a nice shovel head, 16-inch rear, and that was a nice straight swap. Hopefully this video has been useful to anybody out there looking to modify a Harley. It shows you can still ride a regular Harley with regular controls with one hand. You don't need to think about eliminating your front brake or putting an auto clutch in. In a way, it's kind of a stock bike, and it could easily be returned to stock if you decided to give up biking or if you sold it on. Nothing's really permanent, but it's tailor-made for me. So if I can do it, so can you.